I was a criminal. I was smuggling drugs, guns, involved in lots of high-level bank fraud. And, I was really enjoying that lifestyle because I was earning lots of money. I was very egotistical. I just wanted to buy, watches and all these material things. And my life was great in that sense, but there was no kind of deeper meaning to it all. So this was like a massive wake-up call, and it took me on a completely different path.
With me today is Jerry Sargeant. Jerry, welcome and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Rod. It's a pleasure to be here, brother.
Yeah, it seems like just from reading your book, it seems like your life took a pretty major turn when you were a witness to a fatal car accident. So could you tell us about the events leading up to that and then what happened?
Yeah, so I was in Romania with my ex-wife and children. They were like 1 and 3 at the time, and we were traveling from a place called Piatra Neamț in the north of Romania down to Bucharest airport. My ex-wife was Romanian. We're going to see her mum and her brothers, and we're on the way back to the airport. I'm in a cab. I'm asleep. Uh, Laura and the kids are in the back, and I hear a loud crash, and there's glass and wind. I kind of open my eyes, and the taxi's swaying from side to side. And I think to myself, boy, we're in a bad accident. We're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden, we came to a stop, and there's no other cars on the road. And I think to myself, this is a bit weird. Like, what's going on? I look at the taxi driver. He looks petrified. Our daughter, Alea, she was underneath the driver's seat. Laura had Josh in her arms, and both their mouths are full of glass. There's a hole in the windscreen, and there's blood dripping down my face, but I'm not bleeding. So I get out of the car, and I look about 30 meters up the road, and I see these two ladies lying on the side of the road. And one of them has her ankles cut clean off, and the other one is like physically okay, but obviously emotionally, disturbed in a major way. And I look about maybe another 100 or so yards up the road, and there's what looks like a dead body. What had happened is these three ladies were crossing the road in the morning. The first one got hit clean on, and she came through the windscreen, smashed me in the face whilst I was asleep, got flipped over the car, and she died. Second one had her ankles cut off, and the third one was okay. I walked past the two ladies. A guy had come out from a nearby factory. He was on the phone. I thought, what can I do? He's calling emergency services. My consciousness was just like fixed on this lump in the road. So I'm walking towards what looks like this dead body, and I get closer and closer, and I get within about 10 meters, and I see this energy like just hovering above the body, which was the lady's soul. And I'm kind of shaking my head because up until this point in my life, I'd never experienced anything like this. I didn't believe in the universe, God, infinite intelligence. I thought it was all kind of mumbo jumbo. So now I'm seeing this energy, this soul, and part of me wants to see it, part of me doesn't want to see it. So I'm shaking my head, and I kind of continue to walk, and it kind of just fizzles off and disappears into the empty space, into the ether. And by that time, I'm looking down over the lady's body, and her legs are wrapped up over her head. She's completely smashed to pieces. And I remember looking up and just saying, thank you. I don't really know what I was looking up to, but it felt like I don't drink whiskey, and I don't smoke cigarettes, but at the time I felt I need a whiskey and a cigarette. It felt like a momentous occasion, like something had changed, something had shifted, like this soul that was in the body. It's like it had sacrificed its body for me to wake me up and put me on a different path. And it was like someone hit me around the face with a baseball bat, like saying, come on, Jerry, wake up. We're atoms and molecules in continuous movement with space for energy. Up until this point in my life, I was a criminal. I was smuggling drugs, guns, involved in lots of high-level bank fraud. And, I was really enjoying that lifestyle because I was earning lots of money. I was very egotistical. I just wanted to buy watches and all these material things. And my life was great in that sense, but there was no kind of deeper meaning to it all. So this was like a massive wake up call, and it took me on a completely different path.
Wow. So, so maybe let's just back up a little bit. I I really want people to get what kind of a change that was for you, because having read your book, the life that you led was about as sort of non-spiritual as you could get, and the life that you lead now is almost completely the opposite. At the time, when you saw that energy, well, how long did it take you before you got to some additional context? Because I'm assuming that at the time you didn't really understand what it was that you saw, but you just sort of had a general feeling about it.
Yeah.
Did that then prompt you to go through a lot of research and sort of start learning about that?
Well, what happened is like loads of things happened around this time in my life. So I I set up a property business with a friend of mine, and this property business was making millions. And the property market kind of changed. I think it was 2004 slash 2005, and we'd signed all these contracts with clients, and we were making loads of money, and things were going well. The property market took a downturn, and we'd promised and obligated ourselves to fulfill these contracts with our clients to build these property portfolios. And what happened is the property market changed and we couldn't. So basically, the business went kind of tits up, and we lost everything. And more importantly, so did our clients. Like it was a crazy time in my life. I mean, we went from having so much money to I was like minus 500,000 plus a whole load of properties that I was in debt to the bank. Got kicked out onto the streets with wife, two children. So I ended up going back to selling drugs again. Like the property thing was like my way out, and we kind of screwed it all up. But it actually turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because it took me on this spiritual journey. So we got kicked out of our accommodation, our house. We ended up renting this house not too far away. And one night I'm sat there and I'm watching TV. This is how long ago it was, because I don't watch TV anymore. Like I'm watching TV, and my ex-wife comes downstairs and she looks petrified. And she says to me, Jerry, like every time I close my eyes, I see all these dark images, and I hear all these dark voices. She said, when I'm pushing the kids down the road in the morning in the push chair, something's trying to make me push my car into the central reservation. And I looked at her and I thought, that sounds nuts, But I said, okay, what do you want to do about this? She goes, I need to phone my friend. And her friend was a priest, this lady. So anyway, this priest ends up coming around the house, and she puts crosses up. She's dousing the house in all this energy. And I'm sat there thinking, this is like something out of the poltergeist. Anyway, she calms Laura down. Laura goes to bed. And the next day I go and see my friend, and I say, this weird thing happened last night. I goes, what do you make of it? He goes, you need to speak to this lady. So anyway, he gives me the name and the telephone number of a lady who owns a past life regression business. I didn't know she owned a past life regression business. Didn't even know what one of those was. But I just called her, and she didn't answer the telephone. And she called me back a little bit later. And she said, what's going on? I said, well, blah, blah, blah. This happened in the house last night. And that's what my wife is experiencing. She goes, hold on a minute. And she asked me where we lived, and I told her 316 Richmond Road, like no other part of the address. The phone goes quiet, and then she goes to me, you've been knocking some walls down in the house, haven't you? I said, well, actually, we've just moved in, and we've not knocked any walls down, but the previous owner has clearly built an extension. She goes, yeah, you've got an angry old man in your house. I was like, an angry old man? She goes, yeah, you've got an angry old man. I said, okay. What are we going to do about it? She said, well, I'll get rid of him for you. I said, brilliant. When can you come round? She said, oh, I don't need to do it. I can do it from here. And she was like the other side of the country. So I thought, this is just getting weirder and weirder. So anyway, I finished the telephone conversation. I go home and I say to Laura, listen, I spoke to this lady last night. I spoke to this lady today about what happened last night. And she reckons there's an angry old man in the house. And Laura turns around to me and goes, I know, I've seen him. And I'm thinking, you've seen him? Like, okay. And so this lady and my ex-wife, they've got no common friends. There's no way that they could have possibly spoken. So I I knew there was some truth to this. So I phoned the lady back up and I said, listen, I don't know what you do, but I have to come and see you. And so I booked an appointment, went up there, and she took me into my first past life. And when we went into this experience, it was huge for me, because when I arrived there, she said to me, is there anything kind of going on in your life that, you want help with? And I was like, nah, not really. But then I remember that I always have these kind of like crazy thoughts whenever Laura used to call me. So she used to call me. Sorry, if I called her and she didn't answer, um, I'd call her like a million times, and I'd have all these kind of like visions in my head of like someone coming into the house, raping the kids, killing them, like all of these crazy, horrific scenes. And I couldn't get it out of my head. And I'd dial the phone, and if she didn't answer, I'd jump in the car and I'd drive home. And this used to happen a lot. So I told this lady about this, and she said, do you want to go and find out why that happens? So I was like, yeah, go on then. So anyway, she regressed me into this past life where I was a Saxon warrior. And all the guys, they're packing up the ships. We're putting all of our kind of belongings onto the boats. And we're a little bit away from the reservation, the camp where we all were. And I look up and I see this other kind of tribe come through on horses, and they trampled on my kids in this other reality. They slit my wife's throat in this other reality, and it was the same soul as my children in this reality, and the same soul as my wife in this reality in this past life. So anyway, she guided me and showed me how to bring it into healing. And ever since that day, I've never had those thoughts and experiences again. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I was kind of hooked, and I was like, I need to come and see you some more. So I started booking sessions all the time. I was up there 2 or 3 times a week. And this lady taught me how to remote view. She taught me how to bring my light out of my body and travel. She taught me how to like go into other dimensional spaces, bring information back. Like she was like a kind of an angel really for me, like amazing human being. And it opened me up to this whole other world. What's really interesting about this whole experience with this lady is, as all the time that I was going to see her, like we were stealing money from banks, doing a lot of kind of like mortgage fraud and stuff like this. And we were getting like bags of cash, and like I didn't know what to do with it. We had so much money. So I was saying to her, listen, is there anything that we can do like to help people? She said, well, I know this charity in Africa. So anyway, we started getting this money. I was giving it to her, and we were getting it into the system, and we were sending it to Africa. And we started building schools and water pipelines and infrastructure and helping all these children and families. And people started writing letters back. And the letters, and I was reading the letters, and they started to hit me in a way that nothing had ever hit me. It started to change me internally. I was like, it's actually quite good giving to other people, instead of trying to just feed my own ego and buy all this stuff that I don't really need. So going through this process of awakening and enlightening and, opening up my consciousness, and also going through this kind of process of realizing that all these material possessions, they don't really make you happy. And giving to these people in Africa, all of these things together just changed me in an amazing way. And it wasn't an easy ride, because all of my friends that, I was doing business with, criminal activities, they were always, come on, Jerry, do you want to go and do this? Should we go and do this? It's quick money. And for several years, I kind of like succumbed to it, because it was what I knew for so long. But after a while, I kind of let it all go. And I mean, there's so many other pieces to this story, as you know, you've read the book, but yeah, it kind of culminated, us moving to New Zealand, meeting extraterrestrials, getting taken to another planet, downloading codes that ended up becoming our healing frequency, star magic, and ended up, going to court because I was arrested after moving back from New Zealand. And when I went into court, I made a pact with the universe, because all of these healing things were happening. I mean, I'm talking about 2015 now, and all this started happening, 10 years previous. But when I went to court, I said to the universe, listen, if you get me off this court case, I promise you I'll do this healing stuff. That's how long I kind of resisted it for. like a whole 10 years. But I went to court, and when I went into court, I was stood in a bulletproof dock, and I was looking at a long prison stretch for conspiracy to defraud the Bank of Scotland, holding a false travel document. And I'm stood in this bulletproof dock. The judge walks out with his two accomplices. The judge was male, his two accomplices were female. And the lady to his right, my left, she looks at me and she winks. And I could see wings on her back. I'm like, no, this is crazy. Like, my part of me, like my intuition was like, you're going to get off this. But my ego mind started bouncing around. I was like, no way you're going to get off this. Anyway, the prosecution kind of gave their side of the story. My judge gave, my solicitor gave our side of the story. They went out and deliberated, came back in 40 minutes later, asked me to stand up. And the judge said, we can see you're a changed man. We're going to give you a 1-year conditional discharge and an £80 court fee. You're free to go. And I was like, that's it. But then at that point, I'd committed. So that was it. I was all in on Star Magic. And so we started it. And, now today we've traveled the world, changed the lives of thousands and thousands of people. We've trained thousands in more than 60 countries. We're building our first healing center in Romania. Like, life's just amazing. So coming from, all of that darkness and into this world of light and love, it's an amazing kind of turnaround. And I'm just so grateful, just deeply, deeply grateful.
Well, I want to ask you about the ET thing, Jerry, but does the fact that you were somehow given a second chance kind of spur you on? Is it like, does it give you a kick up the pants occasionally, that knowing that you've really, strictly speaking, you probably should have been in jail, but you're not, and here you are? Does it ever get to you that way?
Yeah, you know what? Like, if I look back through my life, there's so many times that I should either be dead or in jail. I mean, if I go back to when I was living in Tenerife, I remember we were bringing ecstasy tablets from Holland through Spain to Tenerife, which is in the Canary Islands, which is part of Spain. For people that don't know, there's several little islands. One's called Tenerife, sort of off the west coast of Africa, but part of Spain. It's a beautiful little island. When I was there, it was kind of very corrupt and crazy, and the nightlife was wild. And one day we had a load of ecstasy tablets, and the driver drove them down to Malaga to get on a ferry to get across to Tenerife, and the ferries were cancelled. So what happened is I jumped on a plane with another fella, and we flew to Malaga, went down to my mate's garage where we were storing these ecstasy tablets in the car, took the dashboard out of the car, got the ecstasy tablets, went down to a kind of a local hotel, and I met the guy that was gonna fly them back to Tenerife in the hotel. Now, I gave him the ecstasy tablets. He was in one apartment, I was in another, and I had this like crazy experience at the time. Like, I didn't really know how to understand it or what to make of it, but it kind of saved me from getting arrested and going to prison. So I'm lying down in my bed the night before we're both supposed to fly back on the same flight to Tenerife the next morning. And I'm lying in bed, and this kind of sheet of glass or light comes over the top of my bed, and my consciousness started to change, and my light came out of my body, and I floated up over this kind of light that had bended over the top of me. And I saw all of these people, and I knew it was an airport, and I had this really sick feeling in my stomach. And anyway, I'm kind of hovering above my body, and my body starts to kind of descend, and it started to fall. And there was this huge, big red flower, and I kind of like plummeted into the red flower, but then I was back in my body. And I'm like, this isn't good. Something bad's going to happen. So I phoned my mate in Tenerife and said, listen, change the flights. So we got the other guy to fly business class from Malaga to Madrid, and from Madrid back to Tenerife. He took the drugs. He ended up landing safely. Everything was fine. I went on the original flight, but I had nothing with me. So anyway, I get off the plane. My friend picks me up. We end up going to a nightclub. We're in the nightclub for about 20, 30 minutes, and then all the lights come on. The music gets shut off, and they come. I don't really speak that Spanish that well, but I know my name. So they read over the microphone my friend's name, my name, called us outside. They stripped our car down, ripped it to pieces. Obviously, we had no drugs. And so something was looking after me at that time, whatever it was. And when I look back through my life, there's been so many little incidences like that. Um, I was with a friend of mine. We went to drop off some cocaine in the UK. It was about 11 o'clock at night time, and we're in an X5. I'm in the passenger seat. He's in the driver's seat, and we go into this cul-de-sac, which is one way in, one way out. Drop off the drugs. We're driving back out, and this car pulls up in front of us, and three of the biggest guys you've ever seen in your life get out. One's got a knuckle duster, a chain. One's got a crowbar. One's got a baseball bat. We tried to drive our car around the side, and they ram into the side of our car. Anyway, they're smashing our windows, smashing them like crazy. And these guys are massive, like 20, 22 stone, full of steroids, huge guys. And the windows are going, and they don't break. And they're smashing them for ages. Anyway, people start coming out from their nearby houses because it's 11 at night. It's noisy and obviously quiet, but the racket that they're making. So anyway, they get in their car and they go. The next day, I'm driving the car, and I pull up at a shop. I'm on my own. I leave my mobile telephone on the passenger seat. I go into the shop for a couple of minutes. Leave the car. I come out, and the window's smashed, and my mobile phone's gone. Now that's kind of crazy. I was in there for maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And the windows are broke, like an opportunist to come past, think the window, and it's gone. But the night before, these massive dudes, they were smashing the crap out the window, and they didn't go through. Anyway, I moved to New Zealand a few years later, and I'm driving along in my car one day, and I feel this presence next to me, and I look, and there's this massive warrior, like a huge Portuguese warrior. And he says, "You're right, Jerry." I said, "Yeah." He said, "My name's Crusoe." He said, "Do you remember that night in the car?" He said, "I was in there with you holding the windows." And he goes, "If it wasn't for me, the windows would have gone through." And I was like, "Thank you." I didn't know what else to say. So anyway, he was one of my spirit guides, which was me from another reality coming back to help myself. But I've had so many experiences like this, Rod, where, I should have been injured, dead, put in jail, whichever, So yeah, I mean, something was keeping me safe so I could go on this Star Magic mission and help humanity, which is what we're doing there.
All right, let's go to my two favorite topics, which is UFOs and astral projections. So you said that you met some ETs, something along those lines. Could you tell us about what happened there?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had lots of encounters with them, but the one that you're talking about from the book, I was in New Zealand. We moved to New Zealand in 2009, and I thought we were going to go there forever. We'd been researching like 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar, and I met this company called Matrix Institute, and they had these future maps of the world. And on it, there was going to be all these big floods, and New Zealand had like quadrupled in size. The two islands had joined together, and the UK and Europe had gone underwater. So I just bought into all this stuff. So me and the family moved to New Zealand. We thought it was going to be a safe place. Anyway, when we got there, that didn't happen, but so many other things happened. It was such an integral part of my spiritual journey. I met this old fella called Michael. He became such a good friend of mine. We used to sit and talk to Saint Germain every day. He introduced me to Saint Germain. He had a pyramid, a copper pyramid in his garden, and he taught me how to meditate. I used to go around there like every afternoon. We set up a health and fitness center in New Zealand, like a mixed martial arts gym, a strength and conditioning camp. And every afternoon, I used to go around to his place, sit in the garden, and meditate with my eyes open. I had loads of experiences. I mean, some of them are in the book that you've read, but the ET one, this little space pod landed in the garden, and there was a blue being inside of it. So I brought my light out of my body, left my physicalness behind, and went and got in this space pod. And the space pod was just enough for two people or two beings. There was no controls, just all of this kind of light technology. And this being was taller than me. His name was Derek Y, and he's been with me ever since. He didn't tell me his name at the time, but he flew me through this portal. Now, what happened is I'm sat in this space pod, and my consciousness, it kind of goes to the other side of the portal. And it was like the rest of my light body caught up. We flew through this portal for about 4 seconds, 5 seconds maximum. We're at the other side and we're above water. And I get out of the space pod, I walk up the beach, and there's like 200-ish of these blue beings. Now, I'd never heard of Lyrans. I'd never heard of Alpha Centauri. But I knew that we were on Alpha Centauri, and I knew that these blue beings were Lyrans, and they were like my family. So anyway, I walk up the beach, and they come and they hug me, and I felt so much love. Like it's like a love that you just can't muster in this human form. I've experienced this kind of love when I've had other out of body experiences and sort of become one with everything. And I've got close on certain medicines and ayahuasca and things like that, but it's never been to this extent. And when they hugged me, I just felt like I was home. I was, I just started downloading information like how they got pregnant and the foods that they ate and just different things like this, and just bits of information were coming into my consciousness. So anyway, they hugged me. They kind of then let go and parted and made this sort of walkway up the beach. And one of the beings took me up the beach into these trees. It was like jungle. We went through the jungle, and then there was a building that was made of light, a bit like a pyramid. We've gone in, and in this building, there was this really ancient blue being. I mean, they all looked really young. Like even the old ones looked really young, but this one just looked ancient. Like I don't know how many years old it was, but maybe hundreds, thousands. But it was like it reminded me, if I had to go and meet like a Native American Indian chief, this is what I would kind of liken it to from this kind of species. So anyway, I've gone up to meet this being, and it's asked me to kneel down on the floor. So I've knelt down on the floor, and all this orange light started downloading into my crown. And I don't know how long it went on for. It could have been like 5 minutes. It could have been 5 hours. Like time just disappeared. As soon as it finished, two of these Lyrans picked me up underneath my arms, frog marched me back to the space pod, stuck me back inside. And then they flew me back through the tunnel, back into the garden. I get out of the space pod, walk back over and sit back down in my physical body. And like, I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. Like, what is next? Like, I was like, just wanted the next piece of the puzzle to come, but nothing came, for a couple of years. And then we had to go back to England. I woke up one morning and it was like, you got to go back to England. And that's when the next part of my journey started. But yeah, meeting these Lyrans, they changed everything for me because they've been guiding me ever since. They told me to write my second book, Healing with Light Frequencies, the transformative power of star magic. They told me to train people. They showed me all the healing centers we've been building. This was in 2016. It's now 2024, and everything that they told me would happen has happened. And at the time, I thought, it sounds like a great plan, but I haven't got a clue how this is going to manifest. But it sounds great, so I'm going to run with it anyway. And I've just sort of followed the path, and it's all sort of unfolded. Yeah.
When you were meditating, just assume for the sake of the audience that they haven't read the book and that I haven't either. So, but you mentioned when you were meditating in your friend's garden, I think that was a pyramid, right? That you were meditating under. And you're saying you're meditating with your eyes open. So when the craft appeared, did you actually see that with your physical eyes, or is it more like kind of a vision? How would you explain that?
It's kind of like both. It's like I'm seeing it with my mind's eye, but I'm also seeing it with my real eyes. If I close my eyes and I'm doing my work, everything I'm seeing with my mind's eye. When my eyes are open, it's like I'm seeing it with both. The craft was in a different density. So maybe other people, if they'd have walked through the garden, they might not have seen it. I don't know. But it was on a different frequency band. And if I hadn't have met my spiritual teacher, I would have never known how to deal with this situation, because I wouldn't have been able to go and get in this in my physical body. I needed to be in a different density. And obviously, she taught me how to bring my light out of my body and travel. And that's what the Traveler book was all about that you were talking about earlier.
Mm.
But yeah, so bringing my light out of my body, it was integral to getting in that craft, because when you bring your light out of your body, you can choose different frequency bands depending on where you want to operate. So I was able to adjust my frequency to the frequency of the craft and get in. Yeah.
Mm. The thing about someone like yourself who's been kind of doing this work for a long time is it all becomes a bit matter of fact. And so I want to ask you about your first experience with astral projection, which I believe was with your teacher, but could you walk us through that? Because as myself, as someone who's got a fascination with that, I've only ever been able to achieve that once. And I know a lot of people go many years and they're still trying to actually get there. But I'm interested to hear, what was your experience like? How did that precipitate?
Yeah, this is like, yeah, this is one of those experiences that it always brings up so much emotion in me, because the way that this unfolded, um, I was given this book by my teacher, and it's called The Traveler. It's about these two brothers. I forget their names now. It was years. Was one of them Chris? Was it Christopher? You just read it.
Uh, yeah, the names of the two characters. I have enough trouble with the author, who's got like an Indian sounding name,
John
John.
12 Hawks is the author. John 12
Yes.
Hawks. Yeah, yeah. I just forget the two brothers' names. I think one of them
Yep.
was Christopher. I can't remember the other one. But anyway, it's about these two brothers, and they can kind of lie down, bring their soul, their light body out of their physical body and go traveling. And they're deemed dangerous to the brethren, which are like the government. And the brethren have these kind of beings that can chase them through dimensions. It's a cool book. And I read it and I was like, man, I know this is real. She's not giving me this for no reason. So, and it's a small book. You can read it in a day or so. So I phoned her up and I said, listen, I need to go traveling. She said, you better come round then. So I went round. She had this kind of like big barn that we used to work out of. So I've gone in, sat down in the chair, and she's taken me through this process where I've slowed my brain waves right down, and I've slowed my heart rate right down. It was like, boom, boom. It was really slow, and I just kind of settled into this deep space. And she guided me into my heart. I opened my heart and I stepped out from my body into the space. And I turned around and looked at my body, and I could see myself slumped in the chair. And I was like, this is crazy. But what was really bizarre for me is being out of my body. Um, it was like I was still in my body. Like, it wasn't really much different in terms of my thoughts and my emotions and my sensations. Everything was heightened, if anything. And anyway, I walked straight through the wall that we're in, and I was in this next room in her place. And I saw this old man in this checkered shirt, and she said, "Just leave him." Like, so I started seeing a lot more beings in the empty space. Like, being in that frequency, it was much easier to tap into what's on the other side. So I've walked past this being. I've gone through the wall, and I must have lived maybe 7, 8, 9 miles away from where she did her work. So, because at this time we'd moved from London up to Gloucestershire. Okay, before we moved to New Zealand. When I met her, I was living in London, so we'd moved up to Gloucestershire. She was in Cheltenham, and I went straight to my house, and I was outside the kitchen, and I peered through the wall. Like, I could stick my head through the wall, and Laura was making dinner for the kids. And I don't know what the kids had done, but she was like, she was like telling them off a little bit. And so I was like, okay, I need to check on that later. So anyway, I kind of went back, and as I'm going back through the space, I see these two little girls, and these two little girls, they've got like they look pretty. They're in white dresses, and they smile at me, and they've got these really pointed teeth, and she's communicating with me from back in the space all the time. She said, just leave them, come back. Anyway, I go back in, I sit back down in my body. Later on that evening, I checked with Laura and I said, were you making dinner for the kids earlier? You know, did you tell them off? And she's like, yeah, how'd you know that? I said, oh, I was watching from outside the window. Anyway, I just needed that confirmation to prove that what I was seeing was actually real, because there's still that kind of part of it that's like, is it actually really happening? So Anyway, coming back to these two little girls, I went and spoke to them. And it turned out that these two little girls were stuck in this kind of dimensional field. And they were the daughters of one of the people that invested in our property company. Now, what happened is he lost a lot of money. So he just went one day. He left his wife and his children. And the wife, I'm not sure how long it had taken for her to get to this decision, but she decided that she was going to gas herself in the car with her children. So she committed suicide. She went back to the other side, and the kids got stuck in the in-between world. So anyway, a couple of nights later, I'm reading my daughter a bedtime story, and I'm just lying on a bed. She's there next to me. I'm reading the story, and I look up at the doorway to my daughter's bedroom, and the two little girls are there, and they're like smiling at me again, and I'm like, all these pointy teeth. And anyway, I phoned my teacher back up, and I said, "Listen, I've got to come and see you. Like, these girls are here. What should I do?" So anyway, I went round. I think it was the next morning, and she said, "Right, we're going to go in and we're going to help these girls back to source, back to the spirit world." So anyway, we put these kind of suits of light on, and she took me into this like in between space, this dimensional space where lots of spirits that get stuck on their way over are. And it was like walking into this cave with like, it was black, like there was like untold bats, but they weren't bats. They were like spirits of beings that had got stuck. So we're going through this space. The energy is so heavy. We're going through it, and we see this door on the other side, and we open it up, and the lady is sat there, the mum. She's waiting for her children on the other side. So we took the little girls through and introduced them back to the mother, and they were so happy when they kind of reconnected on the other side. And then the three of them went off on their journey. And so she called it soul rescue work. And so anyway, after that, we started doing a little bit more of that. That was another thing that she sort of introduced me to. And then we kind of came back. But this was kind of like my first experience of, bringing my light out of body, having kind of interdimensional experiences, like by choosing it, like it was a choice to go in and do this work. Another thing that happened when I was working with her, I don't think I've ever really shared this like properly with anybody, but years ago, I think it was like 2007, something like that. There was a little girl, an English girl. She was on holiday with her parents in Portugal, and she went missing. It was all over the news, like internationally. A little girl called Madeleine McCann, and I think it was a day or two after she went missing. And this is like a couple of years into my spiritual journey. I'm on the stepping machine in the gym, and I'm stepping away, and I see this picture of this little girl in my head, and she's in like a cave, and the cave has got a bed in it. And I'm sort of like connecting, but I'm on the kind of stepping machine. But my consciousness gets pulled into the cave. And she says, "It's Madeleine. I need you to help me." I was like, "What?" So it's kind of like, I was a bit freaked out by it in a way, but excited at the same time. So I saw that in this cave, there was an old woman, there was a bed, there was a table, there was her. So I pull my consciousness back into my body. I get off the stepping machine. I go home. I get changed. I go onto the Madeleine McCann website, and I say, "Listen, I think I found your daughter." And thinking back, I don't know why I did that, because I must have just sounded like a nutcase. But anyway, I phoned my teacher up again. I said, "Listen, I've just had an experience, okay? And I found Madeleine. She's come to speak to me." She goes, "You better come and see me now." So I get in the car, still living in London at the time. I'm driving from London to Gloucestershire, and you've got to drive up the M4, which is a main motorway, and then you've got to go down the A417, which is like a dual carriageway. I'm driving my car down the road, and something is trying to make me drive my car into the central reservation. Like, I had to really fight with all of my might to keep the car on the road. So anyway, I end up getting to her house, and we go into this experience together. So we kind of bring our lights out of our body. We go to the cave. We go into the cave. We're having a look around. This lady is looking after Madeleine, like pretty well, feeding her and all this sort of stuff. We come out of the cave. We go right, and we're walking down, and we look out, and we see a couple of islands. We're like on a sort of like a cliff top. There's water down there. We walk along. We see this metal pole, these flag markers. So we're reading the codes and the numbers and the letters. We're writing it all down. We go down the road to a market. We get the names of this market, blah blah blah, and we overhear this conversation of this guy with another guy, and these guys are two brothers, and they're two brothers. Their mum is the lady in the cave, and they're telling us that we need to move her on, blah blah blah. So to cut a long story short, what we found out is that these two brothers had taken Madeleine to order, like they kind of stolen her to order for some Egyptian prince. This is the information that we were collecting, and like part of me was like, this is like too far fetched. This is this real? Anyway, we come out of this experience. We've got all this information. Now, my teacher worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division. She'd helped solve loads of crimes. When they couldn't find murder weapons and stuff, she'd found them at the bottom of lakes, all sorts of different things. And where she lived, it was near GCHQ, which is like a central kind of intelligence place in the West Country in the UK, in Gloucestershire. And so she was always monitored all the time. Like, she was good at what she did. So she phoned her pals in Scotland Yard and she said, listen, I'm with a client of mine. And we think we found Madeleine McCann. We think she's in Algeria because when we looked out and we got a map out and we looked at the islands and we worked out where it was, she had to be somewhere in Algeria. And Scotland Yard turned around to her and said, yeah, I know. We've tracked her there ourselves already. And we're assembling a team to go in and extract her. We can't just go in and get her because we're going to cross money lines and religious lines and borders and all this sort of stuff. There's too much kind of other stuff at play. So anyway, when she told me this, I was like, this is bonkers. I can't believe this stuff's really happening. But it kind of really gave me confidence in my own abilities, that what I was able to tap into on the other side, like this stuff's real, and the more you go and work with this stuff on the other side, the more information you can collect. And it's so accurate. What actually happened with Madeleine is she was actually sold. She never ended up going to her original destination because there was too much heat, too much, international press and all this sort of stuff. So the brothers ended up selling her to someone in South America. And I was communicating with her up until about 2013. I remember being in an ayahuasca ceremony in Brazil in 2013, and she came into the space to talk to me. And she said, you need to tell the story because I'll be gone soon. And I've never heard from her ever since. Yeah, like she was communicating all the time. Yeah, I even had the house that she was at in it was somewhere near Colombia. I had the house address. I was remote viewing the place. I was reading the letters. I had the address. I had her new name. Like they dyed her hair, called her Rosa. Like all this information. Yeah, but something kept sort of like there was a part of me that was kind of not in my power enough to come out and share this information at that time. Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's a bit like the person who calls up the airline and has a premonition about a plane crashing, calls up the airline and says, you got to stop that plane because it's gonna crash, and then immediately you're a suspect for whoever messed with the plane. So I guess it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? That if you bring that kind of information to authorities, then it may be thought that you might be somehow involved as well, right? That'd be hard.
There is that. Yeah, definitely. I think as well, like with my own personal like healing, like one of my biggest things on this planet has been dealing with my own rejection trauma. So like, as a child, I was fostered and adopted, and like my birth is quite crazy too, because I didn't write about that in Into the Light, but I literally just wrote about it in my new book, Activate Your Superhuman Potential, which came out actually last year. And I tell how, like, I found my real mum when I was 25-ish years old. And, she told me the whole story. Like, so she told her parents that she was going to college. And when she she kind of left Birmingham and went to Cheltenham, where I was born. And she didn't go to college. She went into a home where women went when they were out of wedlock. You know, it was frowned upon back then to like be pregnant out of wedlock. So she went into this home. When it was time to give birth to me, she went into this room and they left her there screaming for hours. And I was born at 3:50 in the afternoon, and which is an 8 number. Like my whole life is 8 on the 8th of March. And exactly just before that time, 2 men in black masks walked into the room and a woman in a mask. And they gave my mum no medication. They parted her legs, got a massive pair of scissors, cut her vagina open, and ripped me out. They went and stuck me in another room, just screaming. They left my mum screaming and bleeding for hours. And they came back in several hours later, no medication, stitched her back up. And apparently the stitching back up is worse than the cut. So anyway, I'd never seen my mum again. And when I went to my first foster parents, I ended up getting raped as a baby. I can see the whole experience. I even remember like being in the woman's arms when I was given over, and I can see the car like at the end of the grass in the driveway, like I came in. It's wild. Um, but I was raped, and then my adoptive mum used to beat me every day. My first school teacher used to pull my pants down and smack my ass in the classroom. So I had this kind of like this trauma with women, trauma with trust, rejection, abandonment. Like it was crazy at the start of my life. And to be honest with you, I'm 47 now, and it's only really over the last couple of years that I've really dealt with it properly. Like I've been dealing with it for a long time, but there's just been layers and layers and layers. But over the last couple of years, I've really sort of brought it to a head where, you know, it's I feel completely cool with it, you know?
I really appreciate being willing to share some of this stuff, Jerry, because it's things that people don't talk about, and there's a lot of people that are affected by these experiences, and because nobody talks about them, they just feel like, well, I'm the only one that this has ever happened to. What do you feel like was you mentioned, like, if we could sort of take a bit of a tangent, it's really been the last couple of years that you've been able to deal with those early childhood experiences. When you say deal with, like, what sort of things have you done that's been able to help you heal from those things?
Yeah, it's a multitude of different things. I mean, like me as a human, I'm never really satisfied and I never really settle. So I always want to get to the end of something or to the depths of something and really kind of figure it out. And, you know, I remember back, like when I first moved back from New Zealand to England before Star Magic and all of this sort of stuff. I had this kind of like online coaching business that I was trying to start, and I got invited to speak at this event. It was for a company called USANA, which is a health and nutrition company, and they asked me to speak at their team meeting. So I went down there, and before I went on stage, I was completely crapping my pants. Like I was sweating, my hands were wet. I was like, this, I'm going home. Like, I was like, I can't do this. I can't go on stage and speak to these people because my rejection was so bad. So anyway, I thought to myself, you know what? Let me just go out there and be honest with these people. So I went out there, and the first thing I said to everyone was like, hey guys, before I start, I want you all to know that I am absolutely shitting myself. And everybody started laughing. Because I told everybody that I was scared, I didn't really have anything else to hide. So it really calmed everything down. So I've always kind of sort of taken that stance of like, don't try and hide anything, you know, like try and always like just be open and be an open book about everything that you've got going on. Because, you know, when people are completely vulnerable, like it's the most beautiful foundation to create from. But when you try and cover up the cracks, at some point the cracks they surface, and it's never really a pleasant moment. Like it's, you know, in whatever situation scenario it could be. But if you're just vulnerable and you're an open book, then you've got nothing to hide, and it's much easier. So I've always taken that stance, and you know, many ayahuasca experiences have helped me. Going into a number of different past life experiences, you know, have kind of been breaking down this rejection trauma. And I'll tell you the final piece of the puzzle. Um, like I'd really dealt with it probably about 8 or 9 months ago, but literally a few weeks ago, I was in Mexico and I get woken up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, boom, I'm awake. Okay. And like my higher self is saying, you've really got to go back, find little Jerry. You've got to go back. There's some more in the child world. So I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So I kind of drop into the fields and I go back and I find myself in my first foster home. Now, I'd seen myself before being like abused in this home, but this was a whole different scenario. So I'm above the whole situation and I'm looking down and I'm there on a table. I'm wrapped in cling film, completely wrapped in cling film, and I'm suffocating. And every time I'm about to die, they put a hole in my mouth so I can breathe as a baby. And when I'm in this situation, there's my foster mum, my foster dad. But what really blew me away is that my real father was there. Now, I've never met my real dad. Like he had blonde hair, blue eyes. You know, when I've tracked this back, my mum told me that I had like German DNA, a few other different types of DNA. And like when I've asked about this, I was told that he was like German Nazi and he'd gone and impregnated my mum. And the reason that the men in black masks had come into the room when she was giving birth is because they needed to traumatize her so much to basically traumatize her, to traumatize me, so that when I was born, they could break the base of my cranium, which is what they do to use mind control techniques. So this whole process, um, I went into this foster home. My dad used to come around and they used to do these horrible things to me to basically traumatize me even more. And as a kid, I was in drugs, you know, drink, alcohol, all of this sort of stuff. I was right off the rails. But all of the time, I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to go to war. I wanted to kill people. And I had all of this kind of like deep, like, you know, feelings of wanting to go to war. I used to run through the hills. Like, even though I used to drink and take drugs, I always kept myself fit. And that's one of the one things that has saved me through my life too. But I used to pick up sticks when I was a kid. I'd be running through the woods, pretending I was shooting everybody, as a lot of young boys do. But I actually went to go for an army interview. And I think I was like 16, just kind of like just got to that point where I've kind of dropped out of school and wanted to start something with my life. And I'm on the way to the army interview, and I go past this pub that me and my friends used to go in, and I looked in, and my friend Lewis was in there, and he's having a pint. So I went in just to say hi to him, and I ended up having 3 pints of lager. So I've gone to the army interview, and they said, "You stink of booze. Get out." They threw me out. And I know now that Lewis was in there, just he was placed there to save me from going to this army interview, because all the while along, I had these strong psychic abilities that they wanted to use in war. They wanted to put for training me to be some kind of like, you know, soldier. Not exactly what sure, but the whole plan was from that. So going back and seeing myself as this little kid wrapped in cling film that they used to kind of suffocate, let me breathe, suffocate, let me breathe, put things up my anus and rape me with bits of wood and things like that. And they used to do that. And when they do that to a baby, it triggers the Kundalini. When the Kundalini fires up the spinal column, it smashes the base of the cranium. And they create these things called snowflake programs. So we do a lot of this work now, and I think because I've been through it, I understand it. But a snowflake program, so you look at a snowflake, it has like it's a geometry, right, with different edges, and each one of those edges is a personality. So what they do is they put these personalities into people's consciousness, into their brains through trauma, all of this sort of stuff, and then we become like a robot. So they can turn on the assassin personality, they can turn on the lover personality, they can turn on this personality. It's why when some people go into casinos or a school, they shoot people. The next day they're interviewed, they can't remember anything because it was a different personality that did that. So they were creating this kind of program inside of me through the trauma when I was a kid. And drink, drugs, going to live in Tenerife, working for these criminals, and going on all of this dark path in my life. It was just setting me up for working for the dark side. But different things happened, and other beings helped me get back onto this path of light and help humanity. Yeah, so going through these kind of experiences, like back to childhood, even to lots of past lives too, because when you do this work, you realize that these physical vessels that we're in right now, these soul experiences in this time space, they're only a very, very small slither of what our souls have experienced. And we've incarnated on planet Earth many, many times. We've incarnated on other planets, other star systems, in other galaxies and other universes many, many times. So this life, 80 years, 100 years, 200 years, whatever it is, it's a blip in the vast ocean of time. And if you truly want to heal, you've got to go back down the timelines, not just one, but often multiple, and find these soul fragments that have experienced trauma and bring those into healing. And if you want to go a little bit deeper and take it to a whole other level, and this is actually a level that is very, very mission critical for all humans, if you go all the way back to the start, when source was source, and there's just this kind of vibrational field. Okay, that vibrational field split. And that original split, the Divine Father and the Divine Mother, electrical and magnetic, that split resides in the consciousness and the soul of every single human on planet Earth. That original trauma there. And you've got to go all the way back to that and bring that into healing, because that is the mission critical part, and for me, like I've been through so many lifetimes, so many bits of my human journey as Jerry in this reality, and all the way back to the start. It's bringing all of this into healing, and there's so much in between, and it's a journey. And people that think, yes, it's impossible to heal this stuff, or it's easy to heal this stuff. I mean, it's just a journey. It's not hard. It's not easy. It's not impossible. You've just got to commit to the process. And all of us are radically unique. We've all had individual experiences, individual soul journeys. So each human is different. So you've just got to work through and just uncover and strip away the layers of the onion and get to where you need to be. And so you kind of reconnect to that kind of, you know, heart, that diamond light in the middle of you. And when you reconnect to it, you realize you were connected all along. There's just been all of these layers like stopping you from shining brightly. Yeah, it's just a journey, man.
Jerry, I haven't ever asked anyone about plant medicine, ayahuasca. I've not actually experienced. Oh no, not ayahuasca anyway. So, do you mind talking about your experience with plant medicine? How that evolved?
Yeah, so I think it was 2014. I went to Brazil for the first time. And I've been thinking about it for a while. It had been coming into my consciousness. And what I truly feel is like when it's time, she calls you. And like when she calls you, you can't say no. And so I ended up just booking 11 days in this space in Brazil, got on the plane, went over there. I did 4 ceremonies over the 11 days, and it was amazing. I mean, the first night that I drank it, uh, I think I had like 70 mils of the ire, thick black tar. And I remember everyone saying to me, it tastes like shit. And I drank it for the first time, and I was like, this is like chocolate. I'm scooping it out like my fingers, scraping it into my mouth. And it tasted like chocolate, but it progressively gets worse, and it never gets any better. But this first night, I've drunk it, and I'm sat there, and I'm kind of sort of like just being very present. And then I open my eyes, and I look down, and my body's gone. I'm like, oh my God, the music's playing. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm pure consciousness. I can feel the music, but I've got no body. This is awesome. But then what happened is I reached out. And as I reached out, my hands came back. I was like, shit, I've ruined it. Like my body's back. So I'm calling over to the facilitators, like, I need some more. I need some more. They said, Jerry, you've just had a load. They said, just be in the space. You can't have a booster until it's got to 2 hours. So Anyway, 2 hours go past, and I still think that I've ruined. I couldn't get back into this present state of awareness. So anyway, 2 hours has gone past. They give me a booster. I have the booster. It annihilates me. I'm completely in a whole other world. I see the whole world be built in 3 seconds from a bare planet to what it is now. So many millions of years. It was unbelievable. I went to the toilet and I'm on the toilet floor, right? And I'm hugging the bottom of the toilet. And there's this massive mosquito eating my ankles. My head's getting pushed into the kind of skirting board. Like it's really uncomfortable. And Aya is trying to take me down all of these little tunnels, but I wouldn't go. Every time I stepped into the tunnel, I felt scared. So anyway, I'm resisting. My head's getting pushed into the skirting board more. These mosquitoes are munching my ankle more, and it's getting more and more unpleasant. So I had no option really but to surrender. So I went back, I went into the tunnel, went through the tunnel, and I came out in my mum's womb. Okay. When I came out in my mum's womb, I got re-delivered onto the planet in a different way from my actual real experience. And it was a very healing experience. This is another thing that helped me. So I had this kind of experience, which was magical. And then as soon as that happened, the mosquitoes melted into my ankle, my head melted into the skirting board. I was just in so much love, like my heart just burst open, like it was amazing. And the facilitator walks into the toilet. He says, "You're right, Jerry." He goes, "Do you want to come back into the ceremony room?" I said, "Brother," I said, "unless someone wants to use the toilet, I'm going to stay here for a little while." So I just hugged the toilet for ages. I was in heaven, you know. So that was like my first night on Aya, and every night was completely different. Like some nights were kind of traumatic, some were beautiful, purging, you know, some nights no purging. And it was my introduction being in Brazil. Since then, I've drunk it hundreds of times. Like we run our own plant medicine retreats now. We call them Deep in Space. We do plant like Aya, San Pedro, psilocybin, and these medicines are amazing. Like they cut through so much. Like they bypass all the logical stuff. They get straight to your blueprint. They decode you. They read you. They understand you at a level that's really difficult for humans to understand. And then once they've kind of like understood your blueprint, they're in there and they're working on a DNA level. And the healing is just, it's amazing. It's amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. I highly recommend it to everybody. You know, I feel like, you know, we take our cars right to the garage to get serviced once a year. We should take our bodies to a 10-day plant medicine retreat once a year, you know, for a good service and a good clean out. Yeah, definitely. It's
Mm.
beautiful medicine. Yeah, she's such a great teacher.
Interesting. Where we at time wise? Okay, yeah. It's like we've been in a time warp. Um, God, I had so many questions, and I ended up asking a whole bunch of other ones, but that's okay. Why don't you tell us a bit about how Star Magic began? And people are going to have questions about that. They're going to want to know how to get in touch with you. How about you fill us in there?
Yeah. So I mean, Star Magic, I mean, it's a healing frequency. You know, we've trained so many people on these 5-day level 1 trainings that we run. We've got a level 2 and a level 3 training. So level 1 training, we basically show people how to use Star Magic to heal themselves, to heal other people, to heal groups of people. The level 2 training is about planetary grid work, Stargate work, you know, how to recode the planet on a multidimensional level, which is the real fun part, the real fun stuff. Then our level 3 training is about how we take groups of people through portals to other planets, other star systems, to temple spaces, to have uploads, downloads, upgrades, healing. So they're the 3 levels of training. The way that it all started was when I went to the planet Alpha Centauri, had the big download of codes. What then happened is when I moved back to England, I started seeing the code everywhere. And I was saying to my guides, you know, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? And they said to me, you know, you need to meditate more, Jerry. You're just being lazy. So I started getting up every morning with my son, Josh. Like I used to homeschool my kids, and homeschool was like drink, cacao, go and remote view or meditate, all of this sort of stuff. So we used to get up in the morning, go into these kind of like journeys, and we ended up underneath the pyramids. in Giza in these classrooms. And we went every day for 9 months for 2 hours. And when we were in these classrooms, there was loads of other humans there. It wasn't just us, you know. And we were all sat at, you know, those wooden desks you get when you're like 5 years old at school that kind of lift up and you put your pencil sharpener and your books in. Like we were sat at desks like that. And this guy was coming out and he was opening up scrolls. Okay, the guy, the being was Thoth in this dimensional space, and he was showing us these codes. And these codes were the same codes, the geometries that came in the orange download of light when I was in Alpha Centauri, and the same codes I was seeing in the space. So we went every day, a couple of hours, 9 months, and he was showing us how to use these codes to heal people. And so people started coming into my life that needed healing. And I was like, let me just see if this stuff works. And I was trying it and it was working. So I booked a space at a Mind Body Spirit Festival in my local town. I'd just written the book Into the Light. So this must have been about 2014, 2015. It was before Star Magic. And I went to this exhibition, this kind of Mind Body Spirit Festival. I had a little stand, my books, my daughter Alea was with me, and I had an Excel spreadsheet saying I'm giving away 3 free healings. Put your name down, I'll draw the names out of the hat at the end of the weekend. About 70 or 80 people put their name down, and I phoned them all up. I said, listen, you've won. I drew your name out of the hat. I just wanted to practice. So I had all of these people to practice on. So I was working on them every day, getting really good results. So I phoned them back up and I said, listen, you know, can I come to your house for a cup of tea and bring my camera so I can get a testimonial? You can tell people about your experience. So I ended up going all over the place, getting these testimonials. And then I set up a website called the Facilitator Training. There was no Star Magic then. Star Magic came a little bit after. And then it was in 2016, we started Star Magic. And the reason that we started it is because we were being pushed by the Lyrans to start it. And as soon as we did, Derek came and visited me again, the one that took me in the spacecraft. And I was meditating, looking out over the town, and I see the Christ consciousness grid of the planet, and I see all these orange dots. And I said, what are those? He said, they're healing centers. You've got to build them. I said, well, if I build them, who's going to run them? He said, well, you've got to train people. So that's when I ran home. I wrote the book, Healing with Light Frequencies, designed the training program. And then the following February 2017, we put the first training up online. And people came from Australia, from Egypt, from America, from Canada. And I was stood at the front of the classroom like, what the heck are you guys doing here? Like, I'd never done anything like this before, you know? But I designed this training program, took everybody through it, and they loved it. So since then, we've just been all over the world, from China, Taiwan, America, like everywhere, and just trained all these people. And, you know, we've got the first bit of land in Romania. We're getting planning permission at the moment. Hopefully we'll get it this year and we'll start building next year. So yeah, like everything's just it's wild and amazing, and I'm just grateful. I get to speak to beautiful people like you all the time, and you know, just share this stuff and inspire people and help people get out of deep, dark spaces and turn their lives around. And what I always say to people is this, you know, if I can be where I was and I can change, then I'm not going to buy any excuses from you. There's just no way, because if I can do it, you can definitely do it. And people that come to our training, I mean, we've trained people from 8 years old to 98, everyone in between, like teachers, policemen, firemen, doctors, lawyers, stay-at-home mums, computer geniuses, like everybody. You name it. Like people have been to our training, and everybody can do this stuff. Like we've broken it down in a simple to easy understand and implement fashion. And the amazing thing is that this healing that we do, it's at distance. It's pretty much all at distance. The only time you see me working is at a group healing event, at a training, or some kind of demonstration or exhibition. 95% of the time, our healing's done at distance. So, you know, you could be in Australia. I bring up a hologram of you. I work on the hologram, and everything I do to the hologram happens to you. You know, like, yeah, I mean, we've worked on all sorts of diseases, all sorts of things, like from brain tumors to people getting up out of wheelchairs that were paralyzed. If you go to the website, starmagichealing.org, and you go to the case studies section, you see all the videos. It's wild. And whenever it happens, I'm still blown away. I don't think, oh, yeah, it's just another day at the office. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is truly amazing, you know? Because it lifts you so much to see the look in someone's eyes when when their life gets changed around and they can get up out of a wheelchair, or they take their hearing aid out and they can hear, there's no better feeling than that. And in a way, it's like a drug. It just keeps driving. You want more of it. Yes, it's amazing, Rod.
Jerry, this has been quite a journey listening to your story. We enjoyed every minute of it. Have you got any final message that you'd like to leave people with before we wrap it up?
I mean, my final message would be, just know that you're powerful, and know that no one is coming to save you. Like, no extraterrestrials coming to save you. Jesus isn't coming back. Mother Mary isn't coming back. This is on you. But the thing is, you've done this gazillion times. You've gone through this ascension journey so many times. You've been thrown into the devil's pit, and you found your way back to love so many times. We're in a training ascension camp. We're on in like one of the most toughest training grounds in the whole universe right now, Earth School. And when we come down here, our memory gets blank slated. But if you're just willing to take a deep dive into your heart and sit with yourself, you're going to unlock so much wisdom and potential. And you'll realize that every galaxy, every star, every planet, every sun, every moon is inside every cell in your body. You've got so much potential, so much firepower. And when you start to meditate and bring in off-planet frequencies that activate your DNA, this ancient knowledge and wisdom rises to the surface, and you start to kind of move into what I would call like an unfuckwithable mindset, where you literally know yourself. You don't believe in yourself anymore, because people that believe, it's like hoping. Okay, you go to the casino and you stick $50 on red or black. That's gambling. You're hoping, gambling, that it's going to land on your red or black number. But people that know, okay, they know who they are. Belief systems are based on thoughts, and those thoughts are based on more thoughts. And when you trace those thoughts back to their origin, they're based on time, distance, and measurement. None of them exist in the field. None of them exist in the quantum. They're all illusory. So all belief systems are concepts. But when you transcend belief systems and you start to know yourself, know thyself, know that you're loved, know that you're a spiritual gangster, that you're powerful, that you're unfuckwithable, you've got all the tools, all the skills, everything you need inside of you. You step into that framework, that God, goddess mindset, and you walk with a new energy. Okay, you walk with an open heart, in pure acceptance, no judgment, and you just allow yourself to flourish. And when you move into that mind and heart set, the universe will just flow through you, and it will just navigate you and guide you and steer you, and you haven't got to try anymore. Like, life becomes effortless. I'm not saying that you haven't got to put any, like take any action, because you have. You have to sort of take action on certain things here and there, but actually trying to bring and navigate the things that you need to take action on into your reality, they just show up because you're on the right frequency. When you're living in your head, there's 0.25-second window between stimulus and response. When you're in your heart, that 0.25-second window disappears. So instead of reacting to your environment and being like a pinball in a pinball machine, you live from your heart, and you live from a space of acceptance and love. And that's when the magic happens. That's how we can unify as sisters and brothers on this planet and start to look into each other's eyes and realize we're all part of the same ocean of consciousness. This ocean of consciousness is like an ocean all over the planet, and all the waves of the individualized different experiences. And the waves, they crash on the shore, they get pulled back out into the ocean. All of these bodies that the consciousness is in right now, you're Rod, I'm Jerry, someone else is Samantha, blah, blah, blah. They're all just different waves, but we're all part of the same ocean. And so when we come into that state of acceptance, we allow those waves to be pulled back into the frequency of oneness, and unity just overrides everything. And then all of the bullshit in the world kind of just fades into oblivion, and we get to live in this kind of 5D frequency band. We get to choose love instead of fear, because fear limits so many people. But fear is a choice. Danger might be real, but fear is a choice. So you got fear and love on the same emotional spectrum. Why not just choose love? Why choose fear? It's crazy. Okay, but this is the key. Going into your heart, breathing, being, looking after yourself, moving your body, putting clean foods into your body, exercising your body, meditating your body, and loving the crap out of yourself. Yeah, that's my final message, really, brother. been awesome to be with you.
It's been a tremendous privilege of mine to talk to you today, Jerry. Your courage and your brutal honesty, it's really something. So thanks for being my guest today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So much love, and I wish you all the best in everything.